Okay, I would like to introduce everyone to the 15th lecture, shiur, in the continuing series of lectures on the section in the Rambam, in the Moreh Nevuchim, or the chapters in the Moreh Nevuchim that deal with what has been termed the Rambam's Negative Theology. Last week, at the very end of the shiur, I proposed what to some of you might have been a little bit of a startling observation, that in a certain sense the Rambam understood that his role in the Moreh Nevuchim, in a certain sense, was parallel, akin to that role of Moshe Rabbeinu, namely the promulgating the concept of monotheism, which the Rambam identifies with the negative theology. And I mentioned that, in fact, actually, a lot of what the Rambam says in Perek Samach Gimel, chapter 63, of Moshe Rabbeinu coming and revealing to the Jewish people the secrets of the philosophical concept of the necessary existing God, which the Rambam identifies with the with Yud Kei Vav Kei, is in fact a little bit what the Rambam is in fact doing here in these sections. And the Rambam is actually explicating to Klal Yisrael what he feels to be is the true theology, the true monotheism, the negative theology of the Torah, which in fact it actually is represents the fundamental theology of the Jewish people, the Torah. In fact, the Rambam in his in the very introduction of the Sefer, as he does with many other forms, says B'Shem Hashem Kel Olam, which is actually the pasuk in Bereishis, which the Rambam, as we'll see, uses often in explaining or in his exposition of the monotheism of the Torah. What I want to do now, though, is I want to go a little bit deeper into this, because I think this is a very, very vital topic. It's not actually a topic that's specifically connected with the section of negative theology, but I think that since we got into the topic already, we might as well finish it, we might as well complete it. And I think, of course, it'll be, I'm sure that we will get many, many emails and questions and queries and critiques and criticisms, etc., etc. But what I'd like to do is, I would like to focus on several things in the Rambam, spanning the entire Moreh Nevuchim, where it's clear that the Rambam understood that perhaps the purpose of the Moreh Nevuchim was, in fact, to explicate what the Rambam held was the prophecy, the nevuah, the panim al panim of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, I think I mentioned last week in the Yud Gimel Ikrim, the Rambam, in fact, in the 7th Ikrim, which, by the way, is I didn't mention it last week? Oh, very good. So actually, for some reason, I thought I mentioned it last week, but if not, I didn't bring my Yud Gimel Ikrim with me, but I did actually translate it into English. The Rambam says the following thing. In the Yud Gimel Ikrim, I didn't mention the Ikrim, but I think I did. I must have brought the Yud Gimel Ikrim. I'll say it over again, in any case. If I didn't mention it, I'm going to mention it now. If I did mention it, it'll be a chazara. In any case, in the Yud Gimel Ikrim, which is the 7th Ikrim, the 7th Ikrim is Nevuah Moshe Rabbeinu. It's important to know that Yud Gimel Ikrim, prophecy, Nevuah, and Moshe Rabbeinu are two separate Ikrim. They're two separate Ikrim. In other words, one Ikr is the 6th Ikr, which is prophecy, that a person we have to believe, the Emunah Shleima, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu communicates to his Nevi'im. But then the 7th Ikr is the distinction between Moshe Rabbeinu and all other prophets. That's an Ikr. Moshe Rabbeinu is not just another prophet. And in fact, actually, the 7th Ikr, I think, is by far the longest of the Ikrim in the Rambam, because then the Rambam actually goes at lengths in fact, delineating the distinctions between the Nevuah, the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu, and the Nevuah of all the other Nevi'im. In the course of this interesting and long discussion, the Rambam says, and here I'm going to quote it for you in English. This is the Triebitz translation of the Shilat edition of the Rambam. I would have preferred to explicate this wonderful idea, to which the verses of the Torah, and to explain the concept of pe'el peh, mouth to mouth, in Bamidbar, and that entire verse, in addition to others like it. Except that I realize that these matters are very subtle and require much elaboration, introductions, and metaphors in order to explain the existence of angels, the different levels in relationship to the Creator, to explain the soul and its powers, and to discuss the language used by prophets relating to the Creator and the angels. It would not suffice for this matter, even if I wanted to be as brief as possible, to compose a composition of even 100 pages. Therefore, I will leave it for some other work, whether it be a intent to write, or a book about prophecy, which I've begun, or a book explicating these fundamentals. Okay, that's what the Rambam says. Now, we know that the Rambam constantly edited the Perush HaMishnayos throughout his life, which means that if the Rambam was even editing it until he was rather old, which means, in fact, the Rambam didn't write this book. It could possibly be that he would probably just sort of crossed it out, perhaps. But in any case, the fact is, where is this chibur? Now, the fact is that there's a fundamental central question which really any person who's gone through the Moreh Nevuchim should ask: where is Moshe Rabbeinu in the Moreh Nevuchim? Where is he? There isn't a section devoted to Moshe Rabbeinu in the entire Moreh Nevuchim. I mean, there's a pshat here. We saw in Perek Nun Daled, we saw in Samach Beis, we saw in Samach Gimel, but there isn't any section in the Moreh Nevuchim at all devoted to Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, where would I expect the Rambam to speak about Moshe Rabbeinu? I would expect him to speak about it where? In the section of prophecy. In fact, the Rambam says here that maybe he's going to put it in a book of prophecy which he's composing. So what I would like to do is I'd like to read for you, right, what the Rambam writes in Perek Lamed Hey, right? That's the section in one of the chapters in the section of prophecy. Well, this is volume 2, right? Volume 2 of the Moreh Nevuchim, in the section on prophecy in the Moreh Nevuchim. I think I might have mentioned this last time. Begins with Perek Lamed Beis of section of Chelek Beis, chapter 32 of the section number 2, which begins on page 373 in the Schwartz edition, and it extends really to about Perek Mem Vav, Mem Zayin, right? Also in section 2. Now, in Perek Lamed Hey, right, which in the Schwartz edition is on page 382. So if you have the Schwartz edition, you certainly have the section because the first two sections are printed in the same volume. Says the Rambam an incredible thing. Kvar hivhalti la'anoshim kulam. I've already explained to everybody that what's kulam, what means everybody, right? As opposed to the Moreh Nevuchim, which is a much more esoteric word, which the Rambam doesn't expect everyone to read. But some of the Perush HaMishnayos is something that probably everybody read, and maybe even the Mishnah Torah. And Arbar have Dalim, Asher Bahem Nivdelas the Muz Moshe Rabbeinu, Minavu Shah Nevi'im. In other words, says the Rambam, I've already explained to people the distinctions between the Nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu, the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu, and the Nevuah of the Nevi'im. Hey, Vesi, Rayis Lakach, I brought proofs for this. We have Hasi on the Perush HaMishnah. I explained it in the Perush HaMishnah. That's actually what I'm referring to here. Meaning the Hakdama to Perek Chelek in the Perush HaMishnayos, over Mishnah Torah. Rambam says I explained it in both places. By the way, discussion in the Mishnah Torah is really not much more than discussion in the Perush HaMishnayos. Says the Rambam, Ein tzorech lachzor al zois. There's no need to repeat this. Ve'ein zois min pato sefer. That's not the point of the sefer. Maybe it's not the point of the sefer. What's Judaism without Moshe Rabbeinu? But anything is like this. What I'm going to tell you is that everything that I'm going to speak about Nevi'im and the chapters of this Sefer, it's speaking about the Nevi'im either before Moshe Rabbeinu or those who came after him. I'm not going to even devote one word to the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu. Loy b'mefurish, neither explicitly, v'loy b'remes, not even alluding to him. In other words, the call Moshe Rabbeinu a prophet is just because they have like a common word, but really, the difference between Moshe Rabbeinu's Nevuah and the Nevi'im is a qualitative difference they have nothing to do with each other. Now, first of all, it's interesting. The The Rambam says this is not the purpose of the Sefer. So I'm not going to speak about Moshe Rabbeinu in this Sefer. Now, what do you mean this Sefer? In the Moreh Nevuchim, he does speak of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, to be a little bit scholarly, you could say the following thing. The Rambam says he was writing a Sefer, a book about prophecy. And maybe he thought it would only be a book about prophecy. So when the Rambam wrote this, he thought that he was going to put out the section of prophecy as a separate Sefer. So he wrote this book. But this Sefer doesn't mean the entire Moreh Nevuchim. That's one way of understanding it.
But if he was reviewing it, if he's editing and reviewing the whole Islam,
maybe he didn't. I don't know, maybe he didn't. Or, right, but if he was reviewing it, I'm not sure how much reviewing he did on this, but whatever it is. You know, with the Mishnah Torah, we know for sure. The Parashah Mishnah, we know he reviewed. But the fact is, this Sefer can mean this section of Nevuah. It can mean this section of Nevuah. But what is it? First of all, why does the Rambam make such a strong statement? Not one word, Darsheni. That requires some type of exegesis of the Rambam. Strong statement that the Maimon means. Now, first of all, the Rambam's not telling the truth. Why is he not? Well, first of all, the Rambam speaks at length on Perek Lametes about Moshe Rabbeinu. He speaks about his Nevuah. He speaks about what distinguishes Moshe Rabbeinu's Nevuah from the Nevi'im. This is Perek Lametes, chapter 39. You can look at it for yourself. Page 394, 395, and 396 in the Schwartz edition.
Maybe he means afterward. That's before.
Afterward what? He speaks about the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu. What's the purpose of the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu, and how is it from other prophets? He has a long exposition on this. Look and see. Moshe Rabbeinu is mentioned 5-6 times. He says he's not going to mention one word, not even an allusion. He devotes an entire chapter to this. He also speaks about the at the end of in chapter 45, he lists the dagas of Moshe Rabbeinu, and the last paragraph he devotes to Moshe Rabbeinu.
This is which sefer?
The Moreh Nevuchim.
No, which Aleph, Beis, or Gimel?
This is all days. This is the section on Nevuah. He speaks about Moshe Rabbeinu. Not to mention that if this sefer means the Moreh Nevuchim, there's nothing to speak about. I mean, already we've had 3 prakim in the Moreh Nevuchim that are devoted to Moshe Rabbeinu. Nun Dalet Samach Gimel Samach Dalet Moshe Rabbeinu.
In Chelek what?
In Chelek Aleph. I mean, the last few weeks I've been speaking of Moshe Rabbeinu. So how can the Rambam make a statement like this when in fact actually he does speak about the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu, even in the section of Nevuah? In other words, in the most narrow interpretation of this sentence, we still see himself blatantly contradicting himself. Okay, now, first of all, what I want to do is the following thing. I want to get a little bit of a comprehensive sketch of the Moreh Nevuchim, and where does Moshe Rabbeinu fit into the entire Moreh Nevuchim? Okay? Now, I can't give as comprehensive sketch as I would like, but I think if we look at about 7 or 8 places, it will give us an idea of what the scope of Moshe Rabbeinu's prophecy in the Moreh Nevuchim is like. Okay, now, let's go right to the Hakdama. There's a famous Hakdama of the Rambam, an introduction, which actually we could probably give 20 classes on the Hakdama of the Rambam to the Moreh Nevuchim. The Rambam in the Hakdama says the following thing. He says, on page 12, he describes
Psicha.
In the Psicha, right, which is page 12 of the Schwartz edition, he's speaking about communicating the secrets of the Torah. The purpose of Moreh Nevuchim is to communicate the secrets of the Torah, Ma'aseh Bereishis and Ma'aseh Melkava. And he says that Chachamim communicated these things, he says, right, using chidos u'mishalim, using metaphors and parables. Okay? And, right? Says the Rambam, Al tachshav, do not think, sha'asaydes hagadelim ha'elu, that these great secrets, Yeduim atachlisim v'seifim le'echa b'itana. Don't think that anyone knows them completely. Don't think anyone knows them completely. Lord, no. Sometimes the truth, and this is a this is one of the great moments of the Moreh Nevuchim. The Rambam is being extremely poetic, metaphoric, and the Mekubalim love this. They prove that the Rambam is a Mekubal. Sometimes, says the Rambam, the truth strikes us, and we think like we're the light of the day. Okay? But then what happens is that every life, but then the daily walk of life returns, and we're in the darkness. Right? Right? Some people, we're like people who the lightning strikes like a few times, from time to time, at night. Yesh b'neinu, there is among us, mishi habot mavik pamachapam. There is among us a certain person that the lightning strikes him time after time. He's like in an unending, unceasing light. Until the night becomes day. Who is this? Who is among us? This is the level of the greatest of the Nevi'im. As it says about him in the Torah, Va'ata poi amoy ibodi. You will stand together with me. In Devarim, or Kikon, or Panav, Moshe Rabbeinu's face illuminated. Sometimes once in the night, etc., etc. In other words, the Rambam, when he's speaking about the secrets, which, according to the Rambam, he's trying to communicate to the Moreh Nevuchim, the Rambam is saying is that the person who had these secrets, most clearly, among others, is none other than the Adon HaNevi'im, Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, so already, it's clear that these secrets of the Torah, Ma'aseh Bereishis, Ma'aseh Merkava, right, were understood most clearly by the other Nevi'im. Now, it's very interesting. I want to be medayek in Lashon of the Rambam. The Rambam does not say that, he doesn't say, the only person who knows the secrets was Moshe Rabbeinu and that was it. He doesn't say that. He says, Yesh beinenu, there is among us someone, Shahabah, that the lightning strikes time after time with such consistency that what? He feels that the night lightens up. And this happens to be the Daka of the Gadol HaNevi'im. What does that mean? Now, I want to go a little further. In the beginning of the Moreh Nevuchim, the Rambam says, what's the purpose of the Moreh Nevuchim? Says the Rambam, now I'm in the Pesach again, page 10, the second paragraph, it's the fourth line. Says the Rambam, says the Rambam, Mataras HaSefer Hazeh, I'm sorry, I'm in the second paragraph, in the sixth line, the third line of the second paragraph, the second line from the bottom. Says the Rambam, Mataras HaSefer Hazeh, right? I'm sorry, the second line, Mataras HaSefer Hazeh Kuloi, the purpose of this entire book, V'chol Mashem B'Sugoi, anything like it, He Chachmas HaTorah La'amisa. It's the wisdom of the true wisdom of the law. Professor Strauss trains the true science of the law. Now, that's the purpose of the Sefer. Now, I want to go to Chelek Shlishi, that you might not have in front of you, because in the Schwartz edition, the Chelek Shlishi is in the second volume.
But it's all on the internet.
It's on the
whole
internet?
Schwartz with the footnotes on the internet.
Oh, great. Okay, very good. Now, says the Rambam, chapter 27, Perach Chav Zayin, chapter 27 of volume 3, page 516 in the Schwartz edition. By the way, it's all, okay? Kavanas kol ha-Torah shnei devarim. The purpose of the Torah, of the entire Torah, two things. Tikinus ha-nefesh and tikinus ha-guf. You know, the perfection of the nefesh, of the soul, and the perfection of the guf. Says the Rambam, the perfection of the soul is intellectual perfection. Says that very clearly. To be masik, to apprehend the shleimus, the final shleimus, says the Rambam, final perfection. Says the Rambam, page 517, the third paragraph, Lachein ha-Torah misis, the true Torah, right? Where do we see true Torah? I just quoted you the introduction. The true Torah, Asher bi'alnu she'achas v'ein bilta, which we've already explained is one and unique, V'hi Torahs Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's the term Moshe Rabbeinu. Barak l'lamnes sanu shnei hashleimus gam yachad, because it teaches both perfections together. In other words, in fact, what's the Rambam saying? The purpose of this sefer, which is to teach me, as the Rambam says, Chochmas ha-Torah Amisa, this is none other than Torahs Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, I'll go further. The Rambam, in the section of prophecy, so in other words, it's clear according to the Rambam that what the Moreh Nevuchim doing? It's coming to explain this Torah's Moshe Rabbeinu. The plot thickens. Let's go further. The Rambam in Nevuah, in which he blatantly violates what he told us in chapter 35, where he says he wouldn't speak about the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu, not even a word, not even an allusion. Says the Rambam in chapter 39, which elaborates upon Moshe Rabbeinu, he says that the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu is coming to give us the perfect balance in the human being, perfection in the human being. So it says the Rambam, ha-Torah Zoy, and this is only Moshe Rabbeinu, not the Nevi'im. You know the Nevi'im are giving us Musa. They're Bashkicha. They're not telling us the law. Only Moshe Rabbeinu. That's why we don't learn halacha from Nevi'im. Ein Novi Rosh L'chash B'Dava. Kein ha-Torah Zoy. The Rambam says this once again, chapter 39, Schwartz edition, page 395, volume number 2. Kein ha-Torah Zoy, shehiva shehi muzenes. The Torah itself says that the Torah is muzenes, balanced, like it says, Chukim u'mishpatim tzadikim. Yodei atah tzadikim perusha mu'uzanim. Tzadikim are balanced. They're not too full, they're not too fried, they're right in the middle. Says the Rambam, right? And says the Rambam, Kashen nidaba v'sefer zeh al tamei ha-mitzvahs. When we speak about the tamei ha-mitzvahs, yizbar lecha, it'll be explained to you, made clear to you, mizunin v'chochmasan, the balance in chachma, what is fitting to be explained. And therefore it says, Teras Hashem Tamima. Now, what is this chachma? First of all, already the Rambam told us that Moshe Rabbeinu's Torah is the balance. But what is the chachma of the Torah? What wisdom is there in the Torah? What's it with Moshe Rabbeinu? So for this, I turn to chapter 25 in section 3. In other words, the Rambam is clearly being mashlim. Torah is adi b'mokum echad, oshi b'mokum echad. What?
27. 25?
That, what I explained, I already know. What I said, when it was 27, now it's 25. Page 508. There the Rambam makes an argument that everything God does is has a rational reason. No, Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't do something in the world for no reason whatsoever, or for a joke, or just to waste time. Says the Rambam, right? Says the Rambam, towards the end of chapter 25, page 511, Kavar hodati lecha. I've already explained to you. As das Torah seinu be'inyan zeh, the das of our Torah in this matter, And what you have to believe, שכן אין absurdus, it's not absurd to think that even though we do not understand completely HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, all the acts, no, it's not absurd to say that we can understand the Chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but even though Sha'anu Nenu Yodim Rabbos, even though we don't know, right? We don't know many of the aspects of Chachma of his actions. In other words, even though we don't know everything about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we still can understand the wisdom of his actions. Al Deya Zois, on this Deya, Nidus, that was built, Toilas Moshe Rabbeinu. Incredible. Now, if you know the Moreh Nevuchim, which is the third Chelek, which I think we advertised, we're going to speak about the Tamei Mitzvahs after Pesach, but we'll have to speak about that another time. The Tamei Mitzvahs is based upon this principle that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands a mitzvah, we can understand the reasoning behind the mitzvah. God's reason behind the mitzvah. And says the Rambam, that's Torah's Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, Torah's Moshe Rabbeinu is the ability to understand fundamentally the wisdom, the rationale, right, behind the mitzvahs, which leads to the most balanced perfection of a human being. Incredible. Not to mention that the very end of the Moreh Nevuchim, by the way, the Rambam says over here, just if we don't know everything about God, doesn't mean we can't understand God's rational actions. That's actually what the Rambam said on page 12. The Rambam says, right, that even though no one knows everything, says the Rambam, even though no one knows everything, I just read that, right? Even though everyone knows everything, nonetheless, for some individuals among us, things are extremely clear. And this is the dagger of Moshe Rabbeinu. Come on, who's he speaking about? Now, I want to read the end of the Moreh Nevuchim. Some different work now. The end of the Moreh Nevuchim, Moshe ad Moshe. I was going to make Yikram the Mishnah Torah too, by the way. I'm not finished with this. At the end of the Mishnah Torah, the Rambam, right, no, speaks about what? I'm on chapter Perek Nun Dalet, chapter 54, volume 3, page 675 in the Schwartz edition. This is the stupendous ending of the Moreh Nevuchim. Beethoven's the end of Beethoven's fifth. Whatever. He says, he speaks about Mishpat Ustoka. He says like this. He brings about the Shlosh Esrei Midas, which you spoke about in, right? The Tachlis of this pasuk is therefore the Shleimus that a person can come to a level of truth, and it's the Madrega of Mishi Yigia Lahasik Zakil Kafi Yacholtoi. That person who's able to be Masik on his Baruch Hu with the greatest, in accordance with his human possibilities. Who is that person? Who is that person? Madrega of that person? It's Moshe Rabbeinu. It's Moshe Rabbeinu speaking about. In other words, the highest perfection, says the Rambam. At the end of Moreh Nevuchim, when the Rambam says this is the levels of perfection, that perfection is in Moshe Rabbeinu. And then the Rambam concludes, right? This is what I've entrusted you in this book. Someone that's something that'll be very good for someone like you. And he wishes him luck, etc., etc. That's the end of the Moreh Nevuchim. The end of Moreh Nevuchim, we reached the highest level that a person can reach, and that's none other than what? That's none other of the level of that person who reached the highest thing you could reach. That was Moshe Rabbeinu, clearly. In any case, what do we see here? The Rambam wrote a chibur about Moshe Rabbeinu. He didn't call it Moshe Rabbeinu. He did not devote an entire section to Moshe Rabbeinu. The Moreh Nevuchim is the Nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, it's interesting. Why did the Rambam? Yeah.
Does that mean that Rambam held that Moshe Rabbeinu's Nevuah was Aristotelian philosophy?
I knew you were going to say that.
Or
I was waiting for that question. Strauss would probably ask it differently. Did the Rambam think that Aristotle was Moshe Rabbeinu?
is this
The answer is
equivalent?
obviously not. What?
This is equivalent to Moshe Rabbeinu's Nevuah.
No. This is a longer discussion. It's a longer discussion. I can't.
It's
I'll
not.
tell you the truth. I have not. I think I have an idea. I haven't formulated it completely myself. It could possibly be that the Rambam understands that Nevuas Moshe Rabbeinu is something which persists in history, just like the Rambam says in the Shereh Sheni and Sefer Mitzvahs that Moshe Rabbeinu made drushes, etc., etc. And maybe the Rambam understood that the outlook that he's presenting in the Moreh Nevuchim represents the rational understanding of the Torah, which is part and parcel of the Nevuas Moshe Rabbeinu.
It's a modern restatement.
That's what I would think. Now, L'maisa, I have a raya from a Gemara, what the Rambam is saying. The Rambam says, the Gemara says in the Dorim, Daf Lamed Ches, for those of you who, folio 38, side A in your art school edition, the Rambam says in Daf Lamed Ches that actually the Torah was supposed to be given only to Moshe Rabbeinu, Zichur Teres Moshe, and Moshe Rabbeinu was noyeg ayin tov to Klal Yisrael, right? And the Rambam right now, Moshe Rabbeinu was a very nice person and decided that he'd give Klal Yisrael, share the Torah to Klal Yisrael too. Says the Gemara, what did Moshe Rabbeinu give to Klal Yisrael? Pilpulish al Torah. That's what the Gemara says. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu gave Klal Yisrael the rational, the Pilpulish al Torah, the rational thing of the Torah. Meaning is that what was transmitted through the generations was the Pilpulish al Torah, which is I would understand to be the rational underlying things underlying the mitzvahs. That's what I would understand Pilpulish al Torah is. The Gemara is not just Pilpulish al Torah. No, Pilpul we understand in a different way because that's the redaction of the Gemara, by other shiurim. But with the verse of Pilpulish al Torah, it's a Maimon. That's what I think the Gemara means. The Netziv actually refers to this Gemara, and the Netziv says the Ik of Torah is Eish. His Pilpul is follows. It's Akdama, right? It's Akdama to Emek Sheila. And it's interesting that the Netziv, Derech Agav, now that I'm on a tangent, I might as well continue on the tangent, the Netziv actually derives halacha lemaisa from this, that the Issa to teach a guy is to teach him Pilpulish al Torah. In other words, you can teach a guy like, Chumash, even like Gemara, you can teach him an art scroll probably. But you can't teach him Ketzais and Nesivas, or Abchayim. That you can't teach a guy. That's the difference.
That's the different meaning of pilpul, though.
What?
That's not the same pill. You just.
And I right, because that pilpul at the time of the Shas. So when the Gemara is what does it mean, Pilpulish? What does the Gemara mean, Pilpulish al Torah? When there's a Maimon, of an Amayim, what does that mean? I think that's what I'm saying. In any case, I don't know. This is all speculation. I don't know. There's in Strauss's introduction to the Penis edition, he does raise this issue. Who's bigger for the Rambam, Aristotle or Moshe Rabbeinu? In any case, but I claim that Strauss was wrong. I don't say Hainu Hak, but Tas v'Shalom. No, that's. What I want to say is that the Rambam probably understood at this point. I'm understood that the deep rational understanding of the Torah that he has is merely in other words, communicating the rational theology of Moshe Rabbeinu. In fact, if you look at the Rambam in the Yud Gimel Ikrim, the Rambam says the difference between a Navi and Moshe Rabbeinu is the Nevi'im operate through metaphor, and they operate through the imaginative faculty, the Koyach HaMedameh, and Moshe Rabbeinu is pure what? Koyach HaMedabah, which is the rational faculty. Now, one thing, I think needs to be mentioned, why is the Rambam so insistent that he's not going to speak about Moshe Rabbeinu in the prophecy? I don't know, but what's very interesting is the Rambam says in his Hadamah that there are two purposes of the Sefer. One is to explain the the true wisdom of the Torah, and the second David to explain the Meshalim of the Nevi'im, the Bevels of the Nevi'im. Now Moshe Rabbeinu, at least in his halacha, didn't speak metaphorically. Oh, the Christians believe that. We don't believe that. So it could possibly be that Rambam understood Nevuah L'chud and Moshe Rabbeinu L'chud. Namely what? In other words, when I'm speaking about Nevuah, I speak about the imaginative faculty, I speak about that the Nevi'im use metaphor because they saw B'cholim and everything, that's not Moshe Rabbeinu. In other words, in my description of prophecy, I don't mean Moshe Rabbeinu. And in fact, there shouldn't be a remes to Moshe Rabbeinu, an illusion. Why not? Don't think Moshe Rabbeinu used metaphor. That's pal peh, panim panim. Because the Rambam here is insisting that in fact, Moshe Rabbeinu has nothing in common with the prophets. I mean, the word Nevuah is used, but that's it. It has really nothing substantially in common with the prophets. Because the promise, so in other words, what are the two purposes of the Moreh Nevuchim? One is to explain the what? The Nevuah by Moshe Rabbeinu, and one is to explain the Nevuah of the other prophets. That's really what the Rambam means. So in other words, the Nevuah of the other prophets, the Rambam devotes in his sections of prophecy when he speaks about metaphor. The Nevuah of the, or maybe in the first section too, he speaks about different psukim of the Torah. By the way, Derech Agav, it's very interesting, the non-halachic psukim of the Torah, the Rambam actually treats that like very, very similar to that of the prophets. It's very, very interesting. But when we speak about Moshe Rabbeinu, we speak about the halachas, the legal part of the Torah. But in any case, the fact is that these are two separate subject matters, and one of them with the other. They have to keep them separate. Okay, in any case, I just want to say one other thing too, which is interesting. This translation, the Rambam says, I'm going to explain the concept of Mount Pal Peh and the entire verse. When does the Rambam speak about the entire verse? He speaks about it actually in the first Chelek. The first Chelek, in Perek Gimel, and in Perek Dalet, chapter 4, it's actually on page 36 and page 37 in the Schwartz edition. There the Rambam speaks about not Pal Peh, but the other part of the Pasuk. So the Rambam spoke about the other part of the Pasuk. The other Pasuk mean, right, Utmunas Hashem Yabit. Tmunas Hashem Yabit. Also too, right? Tmunas Hashem Yabit. So that's the other part of the pasuk. So when the Rambam wrote this, he was very well aware of what he was going to speak about the Moreh Nevuchim. Okay? Baruch Hashem. Okay, now, this opens up a tremendous amount. In my opinion, this is probably the most radical thing I've said about the Moreh Nevuchim in all of these classes. And, okay. And the fact is, though, I mean, I think this thrusts a whole different now light upon the Moreh Nevuchim. Which means the Moreh Nevuchim was not written for Nevuchim. It wasn't written for, Nevuchim. The Moreh Nevuchim was the real thing. It was the real thing. And not only that, we understand the relationship between the Moreh Nevuchim and the Mishnah Torah. The Mishnah Torah is coming to give us the halachas, like Moshe Rabbeinu and the Rambam's, the legal. And the Moreh Nevuchim is coming to give us the logic behind the mitzvahs. The two works are not, an expression of some type of a schizophrenia, or one work's connected to another work, as Strauss says, like the secret Rambam and the unsecret Rambam is not true. In both works, the Rambam is actually expressing a facet of Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeah.
The Talmud misses the intersection of Moreh Nevuchim.
Yes. It's the intersection of Moreh Nevuchim. It's very, very interesting that, no one learns the third section. Right. Not as anyone learned the third section. I noticed that even the Rishonim, the most you get from the third section is the famous Ramban and Vayikra about Korbanos. But there, the Rambam doesn't go all the way. A little bit. I noticed that there's a dearth of Rishonim on the third section. Maybe they're following the principle of the Rambam that no one can be like Moshe Rabbeinu. In any case, I don't know. In other words, what I'm saying is I think the matter requires a tremendous amount of research, and scholarship, and thought. But there's no question about it that the Rambam didn't have to devote a section in the Moreh Nevuchim to Moshe Rabbeinu. The Moreh Nevuchim is Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what comes out. Okay, fine. Now, this whole shiur, this whole lecture was a tangent, because actually I didn't really intend to go on to this, but I couldn't resist after Perek Samach Gimel. What I want to do is that the Rambam actually, in Perek Samach Daled and Perek Samach Hey, the Rambam actually goes back to understanding certain verses, certain psukim in the Torah, which and tries to understand them in the light of his negative theology. In other words, the psukim appear to ascribe to Kadosh Baruch Hu positive descriptions, and the Rambam tries to somehow reinterpret and re-understand these descriptions in terms of the negative theology. Now, what's interesting is, and I want to say something very interesting over here, is that if we look at the Moreh Nevuchim, there's three major sections of the Moreh Nevuchim. I think I've discussed this at one time, but it's worth it to go over it again. I think Strauss says he doesn't understand why the Moreh Nevuchim was divided up into those sections. Actually, someone called me up last night about that question, and I had a little bit of argument with him, but I think it was minded to me that Strauss doesn't give a really. But then it goes like this: the first section of the Moreh Nevuchim, which ends in Perek Ayin Gimel, right? I think it's chapter 73. No, actually, more than that. Actually, chapter 76. I'm sorry. I always call that Sur Meira. What not to think. Why is negative theology here? Because negative theology is what not to think. But whatever it is, in other words, Sur Meira. In other words, all those psukim which appear to tell us that a Kadosh Baruch Hu can be described like that. Well, the Rambam says, don't think like that, chas v'shalom. That's Sur Meira. The second section of the Moreh Nevuchim is Asay Tov. Proofs of God, His existence, His incorporeality, Nevuah, that's Asay Tov. The third section I've called Bakei Shalom V'Radfei here, but I'm not sure why I call it that. But l'chayra, if my hashara is correct, the last part of the pasuk referred to that too. In any case, what's interesting is, in section 60, like this. Now, in the first prokim, really until chapter 49, the Rambam takes psukim from the Torah and tries to explain what these psukim mean. In particular, the Rambam is concerned that we should not think that these psukim are to be understood literally, but rather philosophically, or be Kabbalah if you want, whatever it is. But nonetheless, the psukim should not be taken literally, but rather we have to understand them in terms of the way we understand everything in the Moreh Nevuchim. Now, the Rambam then goes through the issue of negative theology, which has been the subject of the shiurim that I've been giving in this series. And the Rambam, of course, went to Moshe Rabbeinu, explained some of the psukim, but the psukim were related to the, Moshe Rabbeinu's understanding of the necessary existence of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, which the Rambam identifies with the highest notion of understanding God, negative theology, etc., etc. Now, in chapter 64 and 65, Samach Tal Samach Hey, which begin on page 165 and are till Asya 66 too, right? There the Rambam goes back to Psukim, understanding Psukim. So why this strange order? In other words, chapter 64, 65, 66, the Chor should be in the first Psukim, which are coming to take away from paganism. I mean, the answer is going to be obvious. The answer is because these Psukim have much to do with Moshe Rabbeinu. In other words, not all the Psukim, but in fact the Rambam is going to give us Psukim which might indicate that Moshe Rabbeinu's Nevuah was like the other Nevuim, if we understand the Psukim literally. The Rambam is going to give us, given what we understand about the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu, how might they understand these Psukim? So in other words, 64, 65 and 66 are basically, and actually, I think maybe you have to say 67, that's always a decoy, whatever it is. But 65, 66, and 67 are coming, in fact, actually, to explain psukim used in reference also to Moshe Rabbeinu, which the Rambam is trying to explain Lishitas in accordance with that which is formulated up till now. Okay? Now, the Rambam speaks about with the Torah in chapter 64. Now, I'm not going to really begin detail over here, because I think maybe I'm going to leave this probably for next time, because it's getting a little bit later. To start, I'll just be flying very fast at not the speed of light, but maybe at a Higgs particle, I don't know. But in any case, I think the Higgs particle is going to go like 99% the speed of light, whatever. It's not worth it to fly right now. But actually, what's interesting is that these chapters are very interesting, because not only do these chapters actually explicate certain psukim that deal with the Moshe Rabbeinu, the name of God, but actually there's going to be an explication of actually what happened at Har Sinai, which is interesting, because this is actually something which appears 2 times in the Moreh Nevuchim. One time it appears in Samachay, chapter 65. Another time it appears too later on. It appears in Lamed Gimel. So in other words, actually the Rambam is going to enter into the what Har Sinai, Moshe Rabbeinu's Nevuah, etc., etc. In other words, basically the Rambam is actually going to really invoke, in a certain sense, the Torah's description of the Nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay. In any case, I think we'll probably end over here, because there's been enough excitement for 1 hour. And from an undisclosed place in Yerushalayim, Hatzlacha, Rabba, Kol Tuv until the next year. Be well.